A very good morning to all of you here at the India Today Conclave in Mumbai. It is with great pleasure that I want to welcome our panelists to this session, which promises to be very, very engaging because of the sheer nature of activity we are witnessing in the digital commerce space. But before I do that, I'd like to take us all through a few pieces of information and data. The digital commerce sector is estimated to be worth $50 billion by the end of 2022 itself, and 150 to 170 billion by 2027. The e-commerce market is growing at a CAGR of 25% to 30%. In this time, it is estimated to grow at this rate. India's online shopping base is estimated to increase to 400 to 450 million by 2027. And most of these shoppers actually are already in the digital funnel. 450 to 500 million already used social media, while 180 to 190 million shopped online in 2021. The new shoppers largely belong to tier 3 or smaller cities and include Gen Z, which will become a critical cohort for digital commerce operators in the future. India's online seller base has grown 35% annually over the past year, with approximately 40% of new sellers coming from tier 2 or smaller cities. Now that's the interesting part which we will discuss during the course of the session. The e-commerce facilities are now accessible in 99% of India's PIN codes. And 3 out of 5 shoppers belong to tier 2 or smaller cities. 1 in 3 shoppers belongs to low to middle income segments, and 1 in 3 shoppers is Gen Z, which is younger than the age of 25. So there's a revolution brewing in the digital e-commerce space, and that's what we will discuss. Now it gives me great pleasure to welcome 3 people who are actually at the forefront of driving this revolution. Democratizing the future of digital commerce are Deepak Bagla, who is Managing Director and CEO of Invest India, which is investment promotion council, and but is actually driving the startup revolution in India, which we are also proud of. So welcome, Deepak. Koshy, the CEO of the Open Network for Digital Commerce, which we will also talk about as one of the key revolutions which are brewing in the digital e-commerce space and democratizing that segment. And last but not the least, Dilip Asbe, MD and CEO of the National Payments Corporation of India, which is driving this UPI revolution, which we are going to talk about in great detail. So a big hand for these 3 gentlemen, please, as we start this session. So, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And I will start off right away with Dilip. I was just telling him before this that he will face the first question because the UPI revolution is something which is actually at the forefront of this whole democratization of digital commerce. UPI, in fact, Business Today did a cover story very recently where we delved in deep detail on the entire UPI phenomenon. We called it the UPI juggernaut, and how it is sort of powering the entire revolution on the digital space. So Dilip, just to start off, tell us how exactly you think UPI is going to shape up, because the numbers are staggering. In October alone, I think there were 7 billion plus transactions and 12 lakh crore worth in terms of value. And it's just growing. So tell us how this was achieved and what looks like the immediate road ahead first.
Saurabh, thanks for giving me this opportunity. And see, when you look at about 6-7 years back, this whole thing is started. Our Prime Minister spoke about the Jam Trinity, and he kind of fueled the growth. He he kind of gave us the vision so that the country like us should have three things. One is the domestic payments are very important, so the country should not rely back on the external agencies. We should have our own self-reliant, efficient domestic payment systems. The second is, the kind of scale which we can process by ourselves, right? If 7, 8 years back, if somebody would have told me that NPCI can do, 10 billion APIs on a daily basis, I wouldn't have believed myself. But, it's all possible now. We are processing. It's all system built by us, designed by us, and managed by us. So I think it's a great story till now. When you look at any developing country, the digital payments is about 60% of personal consumption expenditure, and we are at about 25 to 30% approximately. This year's numbers are yet not come. So I think we still have a great road ahead. Any developed country again has a turnover of digital payments multiple times of the GDP's turnover every year. We are about 50-60% this year. So I believe that the 10x growth is still possible, and I think UPI will be the core driver of this growth.
A 10x growth
from where we stand today.
Yes, and that's the figures, as I mentioned, are already very impressive in just a span of about 6 years. And we are already at 12 lakh crore in terms of value of the transactions. I will come to you, Mr. Koshy, now, because when we are talking of democratizing digital commerce, the way UPI has disrupted the payment space, and we are talking about the figures which Dilip just mentioned right now. How do you see the ONDC revolution really playing out at this point? Because it's still early days, you're building it out, and from the looks of the initial, the way it's played out, it sounds very interesting. We've done a detailed story there as well in how it looks like it will play out. Tell us a little more about how exactly you are looking at ONDC and how it's being rolled out.
You're asking me a question for which I'll take half an hour to answer, but I will not, considering the time restraint that we have. I'm where Dilip was 6 years ago. That time there was a lot of skepticism whether something will get like this can be pulled on. But one thing, thanks to Dilip, is that there's a lot of confidence that these guys may manage. If you look at what has he done, he's looked at in the transaction has two parts. One is money, other is goods and services. He brought efficiency in money transfer. But what we have still a challenge is in the goods and service. What he has done is democratization of money transfer. It is not anybody's private property or closed loop. I remember sitting in I was just discussing with Dilip, 6 years ago in one of the conferences like this, when they said that, we're doing 250 million transactions a month. We can easily become 500 million in 3 years' time. They couldn't even think beyond that. But in 6 years' time, we are 7 billion. So that's the kind of transformation we are expecting in the commerce side. I saw the numbers which are very positive, but you have to also look if you look critically, if you look at the, the penetration of e-commerce, it's still 6-7%. When it comes to seller side, if you look at the aggregate, it's only 1-1.5%. Right. The numbers growing fast because it's a small number it's starting from, denominator is small. But there is, just like the 250 to 500 million, humongous potential of a broad-based participation. That is what democratization is doing. What is democratization tries to address? Two things. One is because of the proprietary nature of the network, it is leading into the natural network effect is leading to humongous amount of concentration. Not just India. See, you have to understand, this is also one important point that you should think. Is that when we started UPI, it was a developing country problem. But what we are trying to do it in ONDC is a world problem. Americans are trying to track it with America Information and Online Choice Act. The Europeans are trying to do it with the Digital Market Access Act. But we as India is showing that we can do it with technology, markets and enabling policy. And that together with the very high efficiency that have got on the payment side, you will see, what I'm hoping and believing is that what Dilip was managed to do on a difficult situation in 8 years' time, probably we should be able to do it in 4 years' time.
So Dilip has actually made, he's shown the way in the payment space, which is now making it slightly easier for you to roll out your thing. And as we discuss this, I notice, Deepak with a smile because he's seeing it all. Because 77,000 plus registered startups, and in just 6 years, again, the 6 years is another interesting milestone. In 6-7 years, Deepak, you have actually achieved enormous amounts, covered enormous amounts of ground at Invest India. You deal with foreign investors, large foreign investors from across the world. You deal with startups in India who are setting up their shop across the country. Now tell me, and you've just returned a couple of months ago from a world conference which India is chairing of investment promotion associations. Now tell this audience what exactly is the kind of feedback which you see from the global investor base on this revolution, digital revolution which is taking place in India.
Thank you, Saurabh, and thank you for getting us all together, and I think this is very, very critical. First, full compliments to Dilip and Koshy. What they are actually doing is not about numbers. The numbers which you are seeing today is not even a beginning of the most unprecedented transformation which they are propelling. Now let me explain on that one. What has happened in the past 8 years? See, you are as good as the platform which you are on. So let's say we were driving a passenger car 8 years ago. Today it's been moved to a Formula One. That is what the policies and changes have happened. And these two gentlemen have their foot on the speed pedal of it. Why am I saying that? In my opinion, for the first time in our history, do we have the ability of each and every citizen of the country being able to participate in the growth, being able to contribute the growth, and to partake from the benefits of that growth. And these two gentlemen have actually, what they are doing is making it possible. Let me state a few examples with you. Let us start with what Dilip has done first on the entire UPI side and the entire digitization side. And I'm not even coming to the fact that in the past 24 months, every month you've had 2 million new people join your depository accounts, new depository accounts. You've taken it to 100 million. Close to that, that is the flow of capital which is going to propel this growth going forward. I'm also not talking of the point that 49% of the world's real-time transactions, 49% last year happened in India. In fact, if I add the total real-time transactions of Canada, US, UK, France and Germany, multiply that by 6.5, it's still lower than what they did in India. But I'll tell you what is happening now. Startup is a good example to see as to what is the real impact of what these two gentlemen have made. And when we are just beginning this story. For the first time in human history, economic history, a brand new company could get 100 million new customers in 180 days. It happened in India. These two gentlemen made that possible. That is the first, the ability to access that opportunity. Now let me give you the other one. You have 107 unicorns today. You did it all in a period of 60 months in the world. You're number 3 in the world in number of unicorns. You're number 2 in the world in number of startups. You're number 1 in the world with new startups adding every day. The startup story is actually the story of these two gentlemen here. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Do I have another minute?
Yes, yes.
Have I overstretched my time?
No, you can.
Thanks, sir. In the midst of the lockdown in 2020, you added a unicorn every 26 days. Complete lockdown, you added a unicorn every 26 days. Last year, the lockdown was still on, you added a unicorn every 9 days. Remember, I gave you the ability to access that market. I'm just telling you, this story has only just begun. And all this is happening because of them. You have 60 million MSMEs in this country. That is the heart of India's industrial engine. And they are propelling them.
Deepak, you've actually touched upon a very important point about MSMEs. Now that is one of the key drivers why ONDC is being set up, right? You want to truly democratize digital commerce. Now, I would like to ask you, Mr. Koshy, that as we do this, as we roll out ONDC and reach, and we just gave, I just read out figures around how the new wave of buyers will come and the new wave of even sellers are coming on to the to e-commerce, sort of juggernaut. They're stepping on it. Now, what I want to know is how are you going to ensure that the two, because now you're also talking about the two big ones or the two or three big players also getting onto ONDC as part of a collaborative framework. Now, how do you ensure that this kind of monopolistic or duopolistic framework, which probably ONDC was set up to break, does not get repeated on the ONDC framework itself?
Okay. So that's why we need to understand what is ONDC. ONDC is not a platform. It's a network.
Yes.
The big guys are able to bring in certain amount of monopoly because, one, they use proprietary technology, walled gardens. If you look at the basic economic principle, if you have walled gardens, the guys who establish themselves with a critical mass of volume cannot be unseated. So for that, they used a mechanism. If I'm just being a little cynical, is that the strategy all around the world for any domain, whether it is commerce, whether it is hotels, whether it is anywhere, is that what I call drug the buyer and push the seller. So what we are trying to do is to get a captive audience to whom you can push anything. And after that, I will push something that will give me the best advertising budget. So what is going to happen is that even if I am running such a platform, my intent is to have few large brands. If everybody from Jammu Kashmir to Trivandrum wears Lacoste shirt, it is great because they will have a larger advertising budget. Whereas, because that's how it can push. Whereas now with this democratization, diverse buyer platform coming, whose only loyalty is to the buyer. They are truly buyer's agent. They are not sellers, pushers. I don't want to use stronger words, but when that happens, there will be smart startups on one side who will say, hey, I'm going to develop a very unique application for helping the Malayalis, I'm a Mallu, so I have to use that word, Malayalis to help buy. From all the sellers who are there. And nobody is pushing, Lacoste is not telling me, come do, because I'm a small-time guy. But I will tell Koshy, say that in Malayalam, write that in Malayalam, tell your culture. I want to, in Onam time, I want to encourage you to buy that smart kurta that came from Trivandrum. I just use Malayalam, it can be anywhere in the world. So that kind of innovation will drive the buyers. Similarly, look at the seller side. Imagine a smart startup, some smart guys passing out of IIT Chennai, parents were in garment business from Tirupur. If they wanted to set up a portal for their friends and relatives and their close community, they could have done that like this. But problem is, how will anybody buy? There is no buyers there. The open interoperable network, make sure there's 1 billion people in this country are available as a common market. They are coming, they will be brought in by Airtels of the world, they will be brought by the smart startups of the world, they will be brought in by the banks, they will be brought in by the fintechs. Everybody collectively is bringing 1.5 billion people onto the market who's nobody's private property. That time, this smart guy, the startup coming from Chennai for his Tirupur garment industry will also have the equal opportunity. And that is a message. Now imagine, you asked about this big guy. Now imagine I am a seller. If I am, let's assume the big guys don't join us. So now, if I am a seller, I see that okay, they're giving me a lot of business today, but their customer base is only 100 million. But now in this larger thing, I have 1 billion people coming. So if they are not part of it, they'll say, why should I be there? So it will become a natural incentive. This is what happened. I remember when UPI started, some of the biggies in the financial sector said, we don't want to be in this. I'm sure that you will remember that. But then they realized it is better to cooperate. So keep in mind, it is giving everybody an equal opportunity. What does equal opportunity? A Kirana store say that I want to be a small Kirana store and I want to earn maybe 1 lakh a month. That's enough. He has that ambition. He should also be able to survive. We should not kill him. So what we are saying is that everybody has an equal opportunity to provide what they're good at and live within their ambitions without trying to say that I want the whole world. So that is an equal
and
opportunity.
also not get destabilized by the bigger players which have the access to better technology, etc. So the point about being a network is very important in that case, and creation of communities, therefore, which you also sort of highlighted. Dilip, I want to come to you to ask you about the MDR issue. The merchant discount rate is not there. I mean, what is the future of the MDR problem? Do you think providing an MDR will accelerate the adoption and get it to that 10x which you're talking about, or do you think that's a little far away? Right?
So, goes without saying. I just want to add one point before coming to the MDR issue, and Deepak spoke about the fintechs and startups. And I think today any startup requires two things, right? One is, it needs a vehicle for a digitally onboarding the customers in a lowest possible cost. And second is, whatever the service startup is providing, it needs a mechanism to collect that money very efficiently, right? And today, I think thanks to RBI and the government, the both Aadhaar and NPCI has been set up as a public good infrastructures. And I think the ONDC is also quite a logical extension of these two infrastructures. So I think thanks to RBI, thanks to government to think about this in advance and, I think plan the future. The second point Koshy spoke about, the equal opportunity. I think the equal opportunity is very important, and I think the RBI's principle of interoperability is embedded back in our blood. Whatever we do now in India, whatever payment system you call or whatever the institution you call are fully interoperable, equal opportunity to all players, and based on their capability, their competence, they are able to gain the market share. Now coming back to the MDR issue, obviously goes without saying that while we are at X now and we are looking at 10X, we need revenues. We need reasonable revenues. Let me use the word reasonable. It should not be a profiteering tool, but it needs reasonable incentives. And thankfully, the government of India last year provided some incentives to the level required, and I'm sure this year also they may consider to provide that. Now, when we look at the UPI, which is like customer using its own money, now we have started with the RBI's recent approval. The credit is also now coming up on UPI.
Right. So
now the credit, it's a loan product, and there the MDR exists. So there is enough opportunity leveraging the UPI. When you look at cross-selling the other financial services products, looking at providing the fully digital credit. Now, we just have 40-50 million unique Indians having credit cards. Now with UPI, we have an opportunity to underwrite every Indian.
You're talking about the
right?
RuPay card, the RuPay
yeah, I'm just saying,
UPI.
while the RuPay card exists,
Yes.
it's a digital version, right?
Yeah,
Now today, most of the times you are transacting using the phone, even when you have a card.
That's
so
right.
technically, what we are saying is, there are many opportunities using this platform for the ecosystem to make revenues, right?
So for the debit transactions, it will be there will be
So
no charge.
it's not a zero MDR. The government is providing the
Correct,
incentives.
correct.
Till the time government provides, it's fine. I'm saying we are okay. Either the merchant pays or the government pays in that sense.
Now, I want to also talk about the smaller, players who are coming into the system, which is a critical element of all the stuff that you guys are doing. How do you sort of take the message to the smaller towns and the villages that UPI is the next big thing? I mean, I would like to ask Dilip first, and then we can talk about ONDC.
So, today also, if you look at, tier 3 to 6 or tier 2 to 6, you see QR codes there. You see the QR codes. Yes. Thanks to the smartphone penetration, we see a huge uptake in QR codes. And actually what happens is, the credit cards have actually not gone back to tier 2, tier 6 because there is no POS machine, right? People are not, it's not viable to install POS machine. It's a demand chicken and egg situation. So now that QR codes have already reached to that situation, obviously nobody's saying that the growth is not, growth is possible. Today we have about over 50 million unique merchants accepting the digital payments in country today, right? So in our assessment, as the smartphone penetration goes, and also now we have the RBI recently announced the feature phone-based payments, the voice-based payments, conversational payments, and proximity payments. So I think we believe that the growth will be driven by the rural centers here on.
But P2P is still a huge, overwhelming part of UPI transactions.
But no longer, Saurav. Today, I'm happy to announce that, early when we started, P2P was 90% of the overall UPI volumes. The first time, last few months, we are seeing more than 50% is P2M.
Okay.
And P2P has now dropped down to less than 50%.
So now it's P2M is that's a big change.
And technically, some of the P2P is actually P2M because the self-service plumbers, electricians taking the payments as P2P in that.
That's true, because those are stuff we typically tend to view as P2P.
But actually it's P2M.
Now, coming to the ONDC part and the reaching the last mile in terms of the tier 3 and beyond, how do you tell the seller and the buyer or the people who are coming onto the network, how do you sort of educate them about stuff like cybersecurity? How do they use the system? What are you doing at the ONDC level to do that?
As you would appreciate, there's no abracadabra here. While the first step that we did is we made it possible to get everybody equal opportunity. But we understand that that's not sufficient. There are two things to happen. One is, while the technology can be used by any big guys without any help at all, taking advantage of it, the small guys have a handicap. So we have multiple strategies. Let me just quickly run through them. One is that we are on an evangelization trip with ONDC, MSME, Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises Center, all states, all of them are now want to be using this because they were all trying to help their industry segments. One of the biggest challenge that they all faced, whether it is MSME or NABARD, SIDBI, all of them are say that come, let's do it together, because the biggest problem, they knew they had a reasonable control on the supply side. They could help them to digitize. They were willing to teach them. But on what basis? They said, I digitize and what can I get? Efficiency? He says, I'm selling so much. What is the big efficiency you're talking about? What every businessman is worried about is, Danda kaha? Where is the money? And that is where all of them could do nothing because customers were somebody else's private property. Now that customers are a common pool available, they said, now it makes sense. I will tell each of these customers, tell that you are entering to enhance your market access. And the rest, now that you're done, okay, efficiency will follow. So there is a change in incentive structure itself, which is giving a lot more confidence onto the wide variety of state ministries, central ministries, institutions like NABARD, SEDBI, all of them, and even philanthropic capital, saying that now it makes sense. If I educate them, there is a merit. Second thing, like I said, it is not 3 platforms or 2 platforms taking 100% market share. It is going to multiple platform and the buyer and seller. That's where my friend will come and help me out. Is that because it's going to drive startups. Yes. So every startup doesn't, while we are proud of the unicorns, every startups, every businessman doesn't want to be a unicorn. He wants to have a decent business in a decent standing in a society with decent profit. Can he survive? Today, no. In fact, that is one of the biggest challenges in the developed world. They are challenging because of this amount of concentration. The small guys are dying out. And today, small guys are getting equal opportunity. And that is why we have a very, very strong active participation, both from the VCs as well as from the startup community. Hey, let me try. So that's the kind of thing to win.
So Deepak, he mentioned how you can continue helping them, and how startups can actually now start leveraging these 2 facilities quickly and go to the next level. So where do you see Indian startups actually ending up, say 5 years from now, in terms of the number of startups, in terms of how they leverage and how they penetrate into newer geographies deeper and deeper into India?
So one, I think we are at that inflection point where startups is concerned. I already mentioned the rate at which we are seeing unicorns. By the way, both these gentlemen would account for 46 of those 107 unicorns, equally. Equally divided, 23 on fintech, 23 on e-commerce. But I'll tell you another interesting thing. We run a program called One District, One Product, which is the Prime Minister's program. And what we are doing there is picking up one product from every district in India and making it into a global product. This is a phenomenal sense of democratization, and that would not be possible without what they are doing. And that is where I see a huge benefit which is coming from there. So what I said is, when I see each of those MSMEs being empowered to reach out to the market, think about it. Before we had e-commerce and digitization, a Kirana store would sell within a 2 to 3 kilometer radius. The moment you've had e-commerce, now every producer has, on an average as we speak today, 1100 miles radius. And it could be more. You've opened the world to them. You've opened the world to 1.6 billion of my citizens, and that 1.6 billion will be just 100 days from today when we turn 100 years. And just imagine what that power will be. They are unleashing that power.
Absolutely. And I think just to, as we end this session, just to ask Mr. Koshy, how quickly do you think, now, I mean, you may say that, you hold your horses, it's being rolled out, but at the same time, as the speed of UPI adoption has shown, and it's continuing and, by leaps and bounds, how do you see ONDC shaping up, and maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see ONDC shaping up as a network?
I believe that I might be able to, thanks to Dilip, I might be able to do a little faster than him because he has done. But I'll tell you what's the ultimate vision. That's what we should do. We should see what's a dream, not some short-term. I don't want to talk like an analyst or talking to like an analyst. Okay. The vision is that in future, every enterprise who has something to sell will be able to make their catalog visible in an open network without being beholden to anybody telling how to do. Today, that's a challenge. For a brand manager, everything is in his control except e-commerce. Tomorrow, that will become irrelevant. So that's the way I look at it. Will become an extension of his marketing strategy, an extension of commerce. And they will be accessed by a set of people who will bring the relevant segments to the relevant products because of the innovation that's possible on the buyer side too, and the unbundling that become possible.
So he's going to 10x. Any figures you want to tell us?
No, he has already proven. I'm just started.
So that's where the democratization of digital commerce is headed. And I think these three gentlemen here are really powering this amazing revolution which India is seeing. Digital India in the truest sense of the word. Ladies and gentlemen, a big, big hand for these three. And thank you for a wonderful session.